This was supposed to be a Saturday that you could not miss college football. Now, if you live like Pete Thamel and I do, every Saturday is a week that you cannot miss college football, but things have changed. This is the College GameDay Podcast. We are recording on Wednesday, October 29th in anticipation of the first Saturday in November. Pete, remember all of the things that were out on social media about November 1st, and people were saying things like, if you have friends who ask you to do anything else other than watch college football on Saturday, November 1st, tell them they're horrible human beings or some such thing. Now, look, we never miss a Saturday because we love it. Every Saturday brings surprises and so forth. But what this was referring to was the plethora of ranked versus ranked matchups that were scheduled based on the preseason poll. There were 7 of them. It was highlighted by Penn State at Ohio State, which in concept could have been a 1 versus 2 type matchup in the regular season. Well, this week we have, of those games that were listed in from the preseason poll, we have only one of those that are it's actually a ranked versus ranked matchup. That's Oklahoma against Tennessee, and Tennessee was barely in that poll at 24, as I recall. The other 2 were not on that early list, and you have some of those in the early list that have absolutely cratered in the season. And so as we reach November and championships are pursued, the games that draw your focus are not at all what we would have anticipated earlier. And how these play out this week is really going to be fascinating for some teams that are going on the road, sort of trying to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, well, this was supposed to be like the football Thanksgiving, right, Rece? Like you got your stuffing. What's your favorite Thanksgiving, Rece? Your your wife's
my wife's sweet potato casserole.
Sweet potato casserole.
Proprietary recipe, and Mark May over my shoulder here still wants to try to market that in the widespread fashion. So we'll see.
Like a pop-up tent, like in the trendy,
Yeah, no, he wants to freeze it, sell it, make big money. Mayday always has big business ideas. He's quite the astute businessman. He would when he would come over for Thanksgiving with Lou, he would guard it very much and then tell other guests that you probably won't like this. I wouldn't try it if I were you.
That just sounds like a sitcom plot, by the way. Like Mark May, Lou Holtz at the Rece Davis family Thanksgiving. That just, I'm sure there were some memorable moments.
Very, very much so.
Christopher Davis grew up with that being normal, which is kind of
exactly.
which is kind of funny. It's kind of funny thought. Uncle Lou's here.
Yeah.
Uncle Mark, are you gonna have another serving of the casserole? Yes. So anyway, I mean, who would thought, Rece, we'd be at Cincinnati at Utah, and Utah would be the second best or second highest ranked team in the state of Utah. When we went around, when people were saying that BYU was losing its quarterback. Utah was coming off a dreadful offensive season. So it is, this season and this sport is trending at 2007 levels. 2007, in my career, about 22 years of covering national colleges, is the year where, up was down and down was up. It was a Dr. Seuss book lived out on the football field. And as we sit here, coming on November 1st, how fast did November come, by the way? I was booking like a trip and I hit November. I was like, November 1st. Wow. Yeah. Like it just hit, went by fast. As we sit here, this is trending to be in my lifetime covering college football, on pace with one of the craziest seasons that we've had. Now, we still have the thing that defined 2007 was that we had all that tumult at top. And Ohio State, after week 1, has really established itself there. And it seems like we have 3 teams, you could probably say, who are, above, and then everything else is just bonkers right now. So it'll be an interesting week to see if we have another of these, like, crazy on, dull on paper, crazy on the field. It's weird. Why do you think this, Rece, and we would not plan to talk about this. Why do you
so it makes the podcast
do you think the schedule makers could have done a better job in spacing games? Now we're in a lull, and some of it is because of what you said. Like, it looked great. Like, who could fault the schedule, then? But just, do you think holistically in college football, people could sit back and do a better job scheduling these things for the viewer and for consumption, maximize ratings, all that stuff.
I do.
Yep.
But some of it is unpredictable
Yep.
because one thing that's going to help is volume will help.
Mm-hmm.
When the SEC goes to a ninth game,
Yeah.
the ACC goes to a ninth game, these things, volume will help those TV weeks and windows that might be a little sparse. But the other thing that changes, I think, that makes it to some degree an unpredictable or large degree an unpredictable exercise is that as we sit here now less than a week from the unveiling of the first college football playoff rankings, forget Indiana, they made it last year. So, give them at least for this era right now established. We could have a college football playoff that includes Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Cincinnati, for three of them, not to mention Indiana.
What about Virginia?
So, and even Virginia. So
Navy? Sure.
Yeah, well, you probably
you're going to have one of those. But
yeah, well, you know what? You might still have Navy. You could also have Navy, Memphis, North Texas. Any
South
of those
Florida's
teams could come
still
out of the American. South Florida's not out of it at all. Really hurt themselves on Saturday, at least in terms of being in the command position. But I think part of it is that, especially for those Power 4 teams I mentioned, because when you would be scheduling games for television and spacing them out in the preseason this year, even though we thought, at least thought that Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech could be pretty good. I don't know if you sit there and go, okay, we got to make sure we get the Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech games into prime slots. Now, that's a really good thing to do because both those teams are really good and they're playoff contenders and they're conference championship contenders. And, both have road tests this week. But I do think you can probably look at some things and spread them out a little bit. The monster weeks are fun, but then when you pay for it later with less than in terms of on paper buildup, you want the constant buildup on paper of big marquee matchups. Some of it you won't get because, as you said, the Penn State-Ohio State game is just a glaring example. I was on Feinbaum yesterday, and we were talking, and I mentioned Penn State-Ohio State, and he sort of chuckled, and he said, I hadn't even really noticed they were playing this week after what had happened to James Franklin. And he was sort of laughing at himself about it, and he goes, imagine that, and basically how that in many ways sort of defines the season, is that this blockbuster marquee game is an afterthought because you feel like you know exactly what's going to happen. The Buckeyes are going to roll them. It's what you think. But then all of the Penn State losses, I know they don't have Aller anymore, but all of the Penn State losses have been close. It's not as if they've gone out and started getting beaten by 40 points every week.
Yeah, and they still have double-digit draft picks potentially. So they have really good players. They have a really good offensive line. They have some elite defensive players there. So the talent has not been the question there. It's been harnessing it that has been the question. I thought Scott Van Pelt tweeted something interesting on Sunday, and I, as the last 3 Sundays would especially say, I don't watch a ton of NFL just because I'm doing other stuff. But he said all of these weekday windows and all of these solitary windows have made the 1 p.m. NFL window a bit of a ghost town in terms of compelling games. Now, I just thought that was an interesting observation holistically. I can't sit here and tell you who played at 1 and why, but could is that a case where you can over curate it too, to where you take away from the, if you get really cute and you're in this window and you flex and you move it all around, you can take away from to use the Thanksgiving, you can take away from the main courses if you get a little too cute on the sides. So it seems like college football probably needs a little more sophistication and intentionality in scheduling, but you can do too much too and hurt the, just your derriere on the couch. I'm watching, which is what the NFL was built on. Your football fans watching from 1 until 60 minutes, right? Every Sunday.
And I believe that college football fans, I know we do. I mean, there's nothing better than that. No. The way things are going right now, and there are always compelling games. It's like Texas and Mississippi State on Saturday.
Oh yeah.
You kind of maybe turned away from that and took that out of your multi-view, depending on how many multi-views you had going, or at least took your attention away from it. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute. He
Punt
ran
return.
that punt back.
Yeah.
And wait, they're back in it. This isn't over here. So there's so much going on. There's so much overload going on, but it's a feast, to continue the analogy.
What do you do when there's a game on the Peacock? How do you handle that with your?
I usually, it winds up on the laptop.
On the laptop, me too. Yeah.
So
every time I log in, I think of you talking about doing impression of Jim Harbaugh on the Peacock. Like when I type in Peacock in my browser. Sharon has the Peacock. That's the first thing.
We don't have the Peacock.
That's the first thing in my mind is the Peacock.
You know what, I shouldn't say this. I don't want anybody to hack my Peacock account. I always get a kick out of logging into the Peacock too, because for whatever reason, when I established it, whenever it was established, probably for free through, some Wi-Fi carrier or something, you got to pick the icon or whatever that's your guy.
Yeah.
My profile is Dwight Schrute, and it's like assistant to the regional manager is what mine says. So every time I'm like, I should watch an episode of The Office after all of this football. Before we dive into games, which is typically what we do midweek here, and it's what we're going to do again today, Coaching Carousel is still dominating the conversation. It's going to be a part of Game Day on Saturday. You're going to give us the latest report. The question has come up in many quarters, are there enough coaches to fill these jobs? And like many questions in life, it depends on what you mean by enough coaches. Are there enough slam dunk, proven winners, high caliber, win the news conference, score a bunch of points, say something pithy or witty at the microphone when you introduce him? No, there's only one Lane Kiffin. There are a couple other guys that could, but are there enough coaches that can fill these jobs and be highly successful? Yes, if you're brave. The hiring people have to be willing to trust their evaluations and not just try to win the news conference, not just rely on the recommendation of someone they know. And they still might be wrong, but they might also be right. Who's brave enough to hire Buster Faulkner? Who's brave enough to hire Brian Hartline? Who's brave enough to pull Joe Brady back from the Buffalo Bills? Who's brave enough to give Tommy Rece a shot? Now, are all of these guys slam dunk? No, they are not. But somewhere in that group, and you can put Glenn Schumann in that. I'll give you a sitting head coach. Who's brave enough to hire Jeff Monken? Somebody should have done that a really long time ago. Haven't done it yet. Who's brave enough to do it? And then reap the rewards for it, because Dan Lanning wasn't proven. That's worked out pretty well. Bob Stoops had quite a reputation. That worked out pretty well when Joe Castiglione hired him. And there are countless others, even elevating guys. The guy where we're going this week. Now, I know Utah was a little bit of a different situation back in those Mountain West days when Urban Meyer left. They elevated Kyle Whittingham. I mean, I understand the ties to the area and so forth, but that's worked out beautifully. So who's brave? If you're brave enough and diligent enough and confident enough in your evaluation and interviewing skills and getting a feel for the guy, there are enough guys. Finding them's a trick. Finding them is not nearly as easy as me sitting on this podcast going, are you brave enough? It's difficult. But if you're sitting in that spot, sure, take your big swing at Lane Kiffin. Go ahead. But beyond that, don't settle. If you don't get your big swing, don't settle. Go and be brave. Find the right guy. Find the guy you believe in, and then back him and see what happens.
Yeah. So I was not a great math or science student growing up. So I always hated the person who busted the curve, right? If the exam was going to be curved, I needed that help to eke into a B, right? And what we have here is, we're barreling towards the most chaotic coaching carousel in history, and everyone is looking for a curve buster, right? So this is not a definitive list, but off the top of my head, the assistant coach curve busters right now in recent history, there's two, last 5 years. There's Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham, right? They were assistants. There was some risk with those hires, and they have crushed it. Dillingham reviving ASU in the second year, getting him to the playoff, finding Sam Levitt, developing Sam Levitt, and obviously Dan Lanning has been a lightning bolt at Oregon. Cignetti's the ultimate curve buster, right? Like he is the ultimate curve buster. You take the losingest program in the history of college football, and you're going to send him to the playoff back-to-back years. Like that is get that kid out of class, because that's not right. He should be going right to Will Hunting's math class at MIT and doing the board. Because Cignetti's, but Mike Elko is a curve buster. I mean, they haven't won at this level since the 90s. They haven't played in the SEC title game since getting to the SEC. He, I think, is developing and will become the archetype for the modern coach who can see the personnel side of it and is, pen big brain, as Pat likes to point out every time he talks about him. It's a large cranium. He can look and build a roster and see it in that way. And A&M is reaping the rewards now for his meticulousness in roster building. So as we sit back and look at this carousel, and none of those guys were obvious, right? None of those guys were the guy.
Not even the guy A&M tried to hire first.
Yes, correct.
They tried to hire Mark Stoops first, and maybe Mark does the same thing with those resources. Mark's a good coach in a tough spot.
And Elko tells a funny story about not being convicted about taking it and like getting in the car with his family and driving around for a while before they got to the FBO. And it was Ross Bjork was still the AD there, correct? That was before he left for Ohio State. Yeah. And he was sitting waiting at the FBO for Elko for like hours for him to end up coming. So it was it was a very funny, none of these things are obvious, and they are and they are linear. And I think what this carousel is going to force people to do is hire some of the riskier hires, right? You mentioned a bunch of great names, Rece. Like, do you go when you talk about assistants here, because there are so many jobs open, we're 12 total. Like we are going to see a bunch of assistants get tapped, and we are going to see, schools that were planning on hiring sitting head coaches now are saying, you know what, we better start digging in harder on assistants, because that might be where we have to go in order to do this. So, I'm just looking at the rankings here. You obviously mentioned Brian Hartline. I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Patricia ends up in one of these searches, Rece. That's an instinct thing. But he's been a revelatory coordinator in that building. They have loved Matt Patricia. Loved him. His personality, his connection with players. Schematically it's been historically good. Interpersonally, it's been unbelievable. Now, he has not been in college very long. It probably would take a year or two. I have no idea if he wants to be a college coach. He's so, head coach. He's so new to it. But I think the results have been such where it would be foolish that, for him not to be a name mentioned. Brian Hartline certainly has earned his spot. You look at Indiana with Bryant Haynes, has been one of the best defensive coordinators in the country the last couple of years at Indiana. Mike Shanahan has done wonders with that offense, calling it now with two different quarterbacks. Colin Klein, I think, in the Midwest quadrant at Texas A&M is going to certainly get some looks. Jay Bateman, the DC, has been in some Group of Five jobs in the past. I'm just going through the top three now. And you mentioned Glenn Schumann. Like, there will be Buster Faulkner's a great name, right? Like, that's a innovative offensive guy who at Georgia Tech has helped them outkick their coverage. In a lot of ways, most of these jobs, you're not at some Death Star trying to maintain championship level. You need to be a little bit creative to do that. Will Stein at Oregon, Rece, is another name where, he could end up at a power conference job. He's probably, in the top three of the coordinators there. So I am certainly leaving a lot of people out. I'm just literally going through the top 10 right now there. But there will be a few hires that are like, whoa, okay. Like, we didn't see that coming. And I hope that's because people really have dialed in and taken a look at the candidates. And I think the brand you are coming from as a coach has never been less important in this carousel right now. And it's like, what have you done? Like Ryan Silverfield, that guy has won, man. He's won with different quarterbacks. He's won against Power 5 opponents a ton. He's won at a time when his roster gets rated every year. Like a lot of credit there. And the skill set to do that, I think of Jason Candle at Toledo. He's been there 10, 11 years. Like the skill set to hire that many assistant coaches, right? Like just think about, you have to constantly put together a new staff, constantly, like that's what modern college football is. It's high level decisions on the fly. And I do think ADs are going to be forced to look beyond, oh, they're 6-2. Oh, they just lost last week to fill in the blank. We can't hire. Like those factors should not be, like when the press conference factors should not be in play.
It's like the decision to fire a coach. You hear this almost every week. So-and-so needs to win this game or he's going to get fired. If you are waiting on the result of a singular game to hire or fire a coach, your decision should already be made. And if it's not, you're not doing your job the right way. I mean, a game can bounce in a lot of different ways. You're going to make a decision based on that. Another interesting aspect is, and I'm not going to sit here because I think you probably know every FCS and every Division II coach. The group of five's in a difficult spot right now in some places. There are some great group of five jobs, but there are others where we've seen, sitting head coaches leave to be assistants. They would have to take a pay cut in some cases to leave an assistant's job at certain Power 4 schools to go back and run their program. Are they like Curt Cignetti was when he left Alabama? Where did he go? Indiana, Pennsylvania, I think. He went to IUP, took a massive, massive pay cut because he wanted to run his own shop, and he did, and it's worked out well. There are others who might say, you know what, I'm going to keep riding this wave and parlay it into something a little more equitable to what I have. There are guys like Ryan Silverfield, like John Sumrall, who have really good group of five jobs, and every Power 4 job's not going to afford them the precise same access to the playoff that they have now. Now, once again, Curvebuster is Cignetti. Right this year, Curvebuster is Brent Key and Clark Lee. So it can be done a lot of places, but I still don't know that I would sit there and say that's the norm just yet. It's easy to say, well, you can do it anywhere because Cignetti did it and Lee is doing it and Key is doing it. Can you sustain there? Maybe, but that's not proven yet. So that's something a coach has to evaluate before he leaves a really good job in the Mountain West or the American or wherever it might be. You've got to evaluate that too. Is there the same alignment that Indiana got or that Clark Lee now has or that Brent Key has developed? Do you have that? Is that Tony Elliott? Tony Elliott got at Virginia. That looked like a tough job. I remember people saying that, man, Tony Elliott really shouldn't take that job. That's a tough job, and now he's figured out a lot of things. They've been patient with him and they're 7-1 and they're in the mix to fight for the ACC.
I'll say this about the Virginia job, Rece.
Yeah.
Tony Elliott's an excellent football coach, championship coordinator, great human. He didn't start winning until Virginia started spending. Like, this isn't that complicated. Virginia was one of the most aggressive, and people would, by the way, grumble about how aggressive they were. I'll just leave it at that. Last year, Virginia was a saboteur in the portal. There was a lot of like, can't believe Virginia's calling our guy, like that type of stuff on the line. And that chatter was not happening before. So Virginia went out and said, we're going to act a little SEC-like here. And quite frankly, it pushed up against some lines. But that was a sign that Virginia was serious about this. Now, that is not Tony who was doing that. I want to be very clear about that. But they internally were gearing up their roster, and they were saying, we're going to go. And quite frankly, the attitude that I caught out of there was, we're going to get a great roster together, whether it's for Tony or not. Because he was squarely on the hot seat when this season began. There was no question about that. So I credit Virginia for getting its act together and in supporting Tony finally. And the results have come. He's an excellent football coach. He's won 62 one-score games this year. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Is that? Can we have Marissa fact check that?
I think so. Yeah, it's something.
I think they won one on a safety that you remember pretty well.
I will say this: they better be careful this week because I think they're a really good team. but they've been begging to lose.
Oh God.
I think the last three games have been outgained in all of them. They've cracked 300 yards, I think, one time.
Yes.
Against maybe by 1 yard, just barely over it against Wazoo, and won the thing on a boneheaded play and a safety. Although they had all the momentum. I said they had the momentum. I think they were going to win that game otherwise. But
can I say something nice about Bill Belichick here in this thing?
They're getting better.
Yes, they are getting better.
They're playing better.
Yeah. It's not why I'm wearing this sweater. You actually are the defining overtime voice, because every time a game goes into overtime, I see you pop up in a Cheez-It commercial explaining to me what overtime is.
Enjoy the Cheez-It.
So I think you are uniquely qualified to answer this. So Bill Belichick goes for 2 in that overtime. So Virginia scores, extra point. Belichick scores, and they go for 2. Why don't coaches do that every time?
They should do it every time.
I was curious if you agreed with me there.
100%.
I've seen this time and time again this year. It's like, no, you're going to go get in like a low percentage dogfight. Go one play to win the game, as opposed to like having to maybe have like 7 great 2-point plays. You're on your 4th best 2-point play in triple overtime or whatever it is. Like, go with your number 1 play and go win the game. And they were about an inch from doing it. But I credit the spirit, but I also that decision was made Tuesday in a staff meeting, probably in August, right? Hey, if we're here, we're second, we're going to do this. And they did it. Now they didn't get it, but I completely agree with why they did that.
100%, Pete, because even though you start again from the 25, as you'll find out in the Cheez-It overtime, when you get to second overtime, you have to go for 2 anyway. So why make yourself have more plays that have to be successful when you can have, I understand that that's condensed space and difficult. That's the play. I mean, we ripped Narduzzi, and rightfully so, for that game, that bowl game against Toledo this year, when they didn't do it. You're like, you've got to go for it's a bowl game. B, you got to do it in the next overtime period.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly Bill Belichick does not need validating his decisions validated by me, but that is the play.
Yeah.
Brian, you know what? Brian Kelly did it when they beat Alabama that year. First, they scored, they're a point behind. They're like, nope, went right here. And it doesn't work every time, obviously.
Sure.
But it's the right play.
I agree.
It's the right thing to do. And North Carolina came up and then short. They're playing better. They'll get somebody.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
They're going to get somebody.
There's no doubt. They are starting to play like we thought they would be, which is sort of a dull, mistake-free football team. The quarterback just isn't very good. There's no other way to say it. Now, he was very good at South Alabama, right? Gio Lopez. I don't know if it's the system and they just haven't figured out how to use him, or just the leap. There, he was at South Alabama for a reason, a couple inches short, doesn't throw it great. But that was they clearly misevaluated at that position. And if that happens in the NFL, in college football, if you don't have the guy there, it's going to be a long year. So, but they are now, at least the way the games have unfolded, they are coaching and accommodating for their offensive weaknesses.
All right. Let's talk some games here.
Yes.
And then get right to the 6-pack of picks.
Can I ask you one more question before we go? You've done this college football playoff show. You've done every single one of them, right? Never missed it in the entirety of the whole playoff. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been sick or called out or anything.
And I'm not asking this to like rah-rah ESPN stuff, but are you more excited about the shows this year because they're just going to be so goofy? Like that in your whatever years of doing this now. So it would have been, this is what?
2014 was the first one. This is 12, right?
Yeah, you're 12 years of doing this. I can't imagine going into week 1, there's this many like, whoa type, surprise team, different. This is the variety pack, right? Of all the years you've done this. Are you intrigued by just the variance that's going to come?
I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, okay.
And the two teams that I'm, assuming no upset losses or anything this week to really turn things upside down. The two teams that I am most interested in seeing how the selection committee evaluates them, Oregon and Georgia Tech. Because Georgia Tech, while winning, has, they've pulled some out of the fire.
Oh yeah.
They got a lot of help. Their strength of schedule is average at best. So, I don't know if there's a huge marquee win on there. The Clemson win looked great. now it's good, solid
Mhm.
wins, good win.
Yeah.
Oregon looks really good, but they're one big game, biggest game anyway. They have some solid wins, but their one big game they lost. And their big game feel at Penn State, didn't materialize. So it's sort of like that's still a good win. I don't want to say that's not a good win. It is.
Sure.
So I think like Oregon really passes the eye test.
Sure.
So I would still, I'd still have them highly ranked. Georgia Tech has passed the eye test at moments, and the resume's good. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see how those teams are, where they're ranked in comparison to, say, the way the AP voters have them ranked. And the interesting thing, too, is you, as an AP voter, you should evaluate and say, okay, are they seeing something I'm not? But you shouldn't just fall into lockstep with the committee. Yes. But you do see some of that over time. Now, some of it's because results drive it in that direction. But, how it's always interesting to me to see what type of discrepancy. Often there's not a lot. Often there's not a lot of discrepancy. But I could see in a couple of cases in the initial poll that there could be some this year. And I'm really fascinated to see that.
How much do you think the new strength of schedule metrics that was a kind of big off-season drumbeat will come into play? Because that's where like undefeated Georgia Tech, because you just mentioned them as a hypothetical, could go against a one-loss SEC team, like Ole Miss, for example, who has a great resume but one loss, a good loss. So like how much do you see that showing up? Because I feel like if you're going to really use that stuff, you have to start using it now. You can't we didn't really think about that a few weeks ago. Like, how much do you think that will be in neon when the first week comes?
I've got conversations on the docket for later this afternoon that hopefully will illuminate that.
Interesting.
A little better.
That's a tease.
So,
tease.
So
we should get a gold star from the programming department. We're doing good accidental work here. So
yeah, exactly. So hopefully, I hope they do it. The other thing that I'm interested is, how will they address with the new metrics or the enhanced metrics or whatever the preferred terminology is? The big criticism that you get is, or that they get, is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they rank team A 24. That might be somewhat surprising. And then when you ask, why is this team ranked 7th? Well, they have X number of top 25 wins. Well, against your rankings, so now, I don't think for a second, you know me, Pete. I mean, these people who are on this committee, 12 of them this year, with I think Randall McDaniel stepping away. They're diligent. They watch the games. Drives me nuts when people say they don't watch the games. Just because they don't agree with someone else's evaluation of what happened does not mean they don't watch the games. They watch the games. They dive into the numbers. They're diligent, and they come up with conclusions. How much, and I don't think for a second they say, well, we better rank, I don't want to call anybody out, but, we better rank Memphis because we're going to use that as a top 25 win for somebody else. I don't think they do that, but when they use it as the rationale, it is a little bit of as I said, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're using your own evaluation to validate it. And there is some merit in that, I guess, but you would like something a little more objective, like looking at the enhanced metrics. They have, X number of wins they performed at this level relative to the metrics. And therefore, they ranked ahead of this other team. The other thing that I shouldn't give away answers, the other thing that I like, because I think it's what I would say someday if I'm ever the chair of the selection committee and on the other end of these questions, I'm going to look into the camera when I'm asked, why do you have Georgia Tech ranked ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss? And I'm going to look into the camera and say, I think they're better.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's what the committee's there for.
Yeah, sure.
I think that what the mix is, what the art is, as compared to the science. The science, those are the metrics. Those are the strength of schedule, the strength of record, the efficiency numbers. That's the objective data that should be taken into consideration. How you mix that, as we continue our Thanksgiving feast analogy, into the proper recipe with the art of how good they look. It's like the thing, I might have said it on the podcast. If we did a ranking right now, and result-free ranking, sort of more of a forward-looking thing in some ways, but just who do you think the best teams are? Who are the best teams? Who would you, in a way, who would you pick to win games? Notre Dame's top 5 for me. They're top 5. But you have to have some of the mix that they didn't come through in those 2 games against Miami and A&M. That has to cost them something.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not ranked top 5 now. That's how I best describe the art versus science.
Yeah.
If it were
it's a great example.
Art, if it were pure art, I'd have Notre Dame 4 or 5, somewhere in there. And closer to 1 than 10. Yeah. I'll tell you that. Closer to 1 than 10. But there has to be some science mixed in with it too, so that pushes them down a little bit. I'm a little incredulous. Like when we did the show last night, I'm still surprised, even with the 2 losses. I think they were first team out. Texas Tech was second team out, because Memphis would bump them down, being ranked 25th, and would get the 5th conference championship spot. Notre Dame's not close to the bubble for me.
Yeah.
Now, they're close to the bubble in that if they stub their toe or step on a rake, then too much science against their art and they're out. A lot to figure out over the final full month of the regular season of November. Coaches to be hired, assistants to move on, all of those things. But there are games to be played. Our 6-pack of picks, Pete. Let's just start the late night game in Salt Lake City, late night on the East Coast. College Game Day will be back in Salt Lake. Cincinnati hasn't lost since its opening game against Nebraska. A couple of dynamic quarterbacks in this game. Who are you taking? You're taking the Bearcats, who are a pretty sizable underdog in front of the mighty Utah student section, or are you going with the home team?
What was the stat Marissa gave us of Utah at night under Whittingham?
Got it right here.
You got it right there, of course.
60-14 in games that start at 7 Eastern time or later, but 4 of those losses last season, 2-0 this year.
Yes. Stop me if you've heard this before. There's some quarterback ambiguity at Utah as we sit here on Wednesday morning, Rece. Mm-hmm. We are unsure as of now. Kyle Whittingham has made very clear. It could be Bird Ficklin making his second career start. Bird Ficklin looked great, by the way, against Colorado.
What a great name, too.
Oh, yeah. From Muskogee, Oklahoma. I told their SID, Keeler McJunkin, that it's hard for me to tell someone named Keeler McJunkin that someone else sounds like a comic book character.
Yeah.
But Bird Ficklin from Muskogee, Oklahoma sounds like a comic book character. So we'll get updates as the week goes on. Tuesday was really their first full practice. Dampierre was not on the injury report, which when you're dealing with Utah doesn't really matter.
Right. Yes.
So that was last week. This week
and last year too.
Yes, exactly. So we'll see Wednesday night how they try to trick us again. They could really trick us by telling us the truth, right?
Yeah. But if they just told us, we go, yeah, probably not.
Brendan Sorsby, the Cincinnati quarterback, we know he'll be playing, and he has been excellent this year. We saw Nick Saban break him down in the film room last year. I'm getting some buzz as I re-quarterback poll here for this week or next week, Rece, that Brendan Sorsby could end up as a first-round NFL draft pick this year. Now, that's not definitive, but he has entered, I would say this safely, he has entered the top 3/4 conversation amongst quarterbacks in college football this year. And he was not in the top 3/4 conversation. People are intrigued by him. Remember, they started really hot last year and then they lost 5 in a row to end the season. And he even admitted he was trying to do too much, turned it over a bunch. But if our listeners have not seen Cincinnati's Brendan Sorsby, he is a 6'4", almost 240. One scout comped him as like a bigger Baker Mayfield because he can really still move at that size. And there just aren't a lot of quarterbacks running around America who are that size. So really intriguing, special player. And look, like Cincinnati's talented, right? Dante Corleone, top 50 type player. Golday, the linebacker, top 50 type player. The tight end, Royer from Ohio State, from Cincinnati Elder. He's a top, they have 4 real high end first 2-day NFL prospects. So that's a good core for a Big 12 team. That's a really good core. Can they go do it at Utah at night? I don't think so. I think Utes win by field goal.
I think I'm riding with Utes too. Cincinnati has given up a lot of yards a lot of different times. Kansas probably should have beaten them. I think Cincinnati's a really good team. They're still going to be in the thick of the Big 12 race, even with this road loss, if they were to get it. Utah is not, it's unlikely because of the head-to-head tiebreakers that they would have lost, but Utah's not completely out of the Big 12 race. If they could get some chaos around them, they would be if they lose this game. Again, long shot because of the head-to-head losses to BYU and Texas Tech. But, they could throw things into a four-way tie at the top as we had last year, some such thing, and maybe they get one of the spots. I think sort of a desperation game. In terms of that, I think the atmosphere will be strong. I think both teams will run the ball effectively. I'll go with Utah as well. I think they'll pull it out at home. Vanderbilt and Texas, that's the noon game on ABC. Now, we always talk about how difficult it is to win on the road. That, not that it was easy, but it was certainly done in the SEC last week. Vanderbilt was the only home team to win at home last week. Road warriors in the SEC everywhere else. Now Vandy gets to turn it around, waiting to see if Arch Manning clears what is apparently concussion protocol to play. He gave a valiant effort against Mississippi State. They had the big punt return to get them back in the game. They were able to pull that game out on the road, and now they too look. It's still for Texas. Texas has not passed the eye test, but they still have just one conference loss. The other one to Ohio State is not damaging their chances of getting into the SEC championship game. So there's a lot to play for tangibly for the Longhorns, and so too for Vanderbilt. Pavia's show on the road, there couldn't be more of a dichotomy in quarterbacks and their paths than, assuming Arch Manning plays, in Arch Manning and Diego Pavia in terms of how they've arrived at this moment in this big November stage. Who do you like? Texas a slight favorite at last check.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see as Arch goes through concussion protocol here, as we talked about this on Wednesday, if we end up seeing Matthew Caldwell, the Troy transfer. He had another cameo late in a game where he came in and zipped a pass. Do you remember
Florida.
this, Rece? Yeah, Florida. Thank you. Yeah, it was Florida. And he looked great. Like, again, the very limited times we've seen him in high leverage situations, he has looked great. A fascinating philosophical question as we move on here. Again, Texas only has 2 losses. Arch has shown some improvement. Just from the macro, is Arch Manning the quarterback at Texas next year? Like, I think that's a fascinating philosophical question as we sit here, because it's certainly not a no-brainer answer that it's yes at this point. Would you agree with that?
No, I think he's definitely the quarterback there next year.
Really?
I mean, you may have intel that I don't have.
I don't. I just think, on my eyes.
Because I think a lot, not all, he has not played to the level that many, including me, thought that he would or could. I don't think, and Sark has said they've probably asked some things that they weren't ready around him to do. They've got to get better up front.
He has had very little help around him.
And so I think he definitely is, and I think they'll get better up front. And I think next year will be a much more productive year. There's still a month to go. I mean, and there's no rule against improving, Pete.
That's
that
true.
Offensive line can improve even now.
They need to desperately. Those running backs need to get healthier and better. Yeah, it's just the pieces haven't fit for Texas this year. There's just no other way to say it. So I'm going to take Pavia on the road. Let's go. Like, why not? At this point, I picked against him too much, and I think old Diego can go and roll there.
I think the game will be very much like the Missouri game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be low scoring. Do you make the clutch plays? Yeah. One of the compelling things last week that I love about Vanderbilt, they made the play when it mattered. They only stopped Missouri one time on 4th down attempts. Missouri is 4 out of 5. But they stopped the one they had to stop on the goal line. It was unfortunately the play that Purbuell also got hurt.
Sure.
They stopped the Hail Mary half yard away from tying or going for 2 and winning the game. they made the plays. If in a season in which the margins are razor thin, Vanderbilt has made plays to win games. Texas has been looser, but I'm going to ride with the Texas defense. I think the Texas defense slows down Pavia and the Vanderbilt offense much in the same way that Missouri did last week, but they held them like under 250 yards, I think. So I'll ride with the Texas defense and say that the Longhorns win a game in which neither team reaches 20 points. So one difference between us there. Great defensive game. This one might not be much of a defensive game. Really important game in the American. It was also under consideration for a game day trip. Navy and North Texas. Navy leading the nation in rushing. Drew Mestemaker, Pete's man crush, the quarterback for North Texas, never started a game at the varsity level in high school. Held up a little sign in his locker that looked like Wilt Chamberlain when he scored 100 points and said 608. Threw for 608 yards.
Wild.
They're going to be running up and down the field. You got Navy or North Texas, Pete?
How can I go against my man crush, Rece? Drew Mestemaker's been one of the great stories in college football this year. Look, Navy's found ways to win games every way possible this year. Give Brian Newberry and Blake Horvath a lot of credit. This is a great quarterback matchup. It's one of the best G5 quarterback matchups of the year. A little bit contrast to styles. I think Old Navy try to keep the ball away from Drew a little bit. I've been told that campus they'll have 11,000 students at their last 2 home games. Jared Mosley, the AD, told me that over the weekend, which that's a lot of students for Old North Texas game. So, do you know Nora Jones went to North Texas? As did Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Because you told me.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I didn't know Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I thought that was a good fun fact, man. Nora Jones, North Texas. They have a great music program there. So they will be singing their victory song on Saturday.
Their only loss against USF. USF sort of pulled away from them late. Navy has USF coming up in a couple of weeks. Navy is yet to lose, but they've played the easiest schedule in the country. I think wild game. I'm gonna go with the Mestemakers too, and say Mean Green gets the victory there. Also, by the way, potential coaching candidate if you are brave. Who knows? World's largest.
Eric Morris. Yeah. He's found some quarterbacks now. Like if you go through his history.
Think it's like Cam Ward, Mateer, now Mestemaker, right?
And he was with the Texas Tech crew when Mahomes was there. Like he's touched a lot of Baker. Because remember Baker started
Baker's
there
at Texas Tech
as a walk-on. So
played well.
Yes.
Felt he was getting the short end of the stick and probably was sort of like Mestemaker in high school.
Yeah.
You got guys that started in front of him. One's a catcher at Baylor on the baseball team. The other one's back up at Louisville.
Yeah, who's a good player, by the way.
He's a good player. He's probably. I think they expect him to be the quarterback of the future, right?
Yes.
Is it Deuce Adams? Is that
I believe it is. Yes.
Okay.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay. We'll check that Pete will check that while I'm setting up the next game to make sure that we're right there. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party in the finest city in the state of Florida, Jacksonville, Georgia, and Florida. Only once has an interim Florida coach knocked off the Dogs. That was Galen Hall. Galen Hall took over in 1984 after Charlie Pell was fired for what now is standard operating procedure, and that is providing players with funds. Galen Hall then had Kerwin Bell at
Were they Pell Grants?
Yeah, that's right. And backed up inside their own 5. They already had a lead on the Dogs. Kerwin Bell at quarterback, Ricky Natillo, who was a standout NFL receiver, a long time for the Broncos, hit him for a 96-yard touchdown pass and took down the Dogs. The only time an interim Florida coach has done that. Interestingly enough, 5 years later, Galen Hall was also dismissed for also issuing, or his part in issuing, what Pete just referred to as Pell Grants. Isn't it funny now? None of that even matters anymore. Dogs and the Gators.
Now you get fired for not having enough of it.
Yeah, exactly. Dogs aren't as big a favorite in this game as one would expect, as Billy Gonzalez comes in as the interim coach for Florida.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I've heard some rumblings out of Gainesville this week of some more wide open offense, a little bit more aggressive play calling. A lot of your new coach, talk, right? As those,
what are they going to do? Hire me, right?
Yeah, well, and also when you replace Billy Napier, what are you going to do? Like run the offense slower and more conservative, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if the Gators can catch a little momentum, because as we have said about this Georgia team all year, they are gritty and they are good and they have great culture and they figure out a way to win games, but they are not infallible, right? Like this is not what Georgia was 5 years ago. College football does not let us have those teams anymore. So I think Georgia wins. I think Florida covers. I think we get a good old fashioned slobberknocker at the cocktail party.
Yeah, I think I just don't see a world in which Georgia loses this game. They're not going to blow them out. Florida's going to fight. They'll probably surprise them. Florida might even run something new or some trick play or something and jump on them 7 or 14-0. Dogs have shown the ability to come back. Slow starts is something they've tried to overcome. They'd come back against Ole Miss, had come back to win against Tennessee, came back and came up just short against Alabama. They won't, if they do fall behind, they won't come up short this time. Dogs win that game. One of the 3 ranked versus ranked games, Oklahoma and Tennessee. Now, last year we made a big deal about Josh Heupel going back to Oklahoma, the former Sooner quarterback, now, of course, head coach of the Vols. Now, Brent Venables made a move on offense, and I guess Seth Luttrell is now on staff in some capacity at Tennessee. So you got Oklahoma, Tennessee, which is not what you would call a traditional rivalry, but there are always these nifty little subplots here. And now you've got a couple of ranked teams, both with 2 losses, both knowing that a third will virtually eliminate them, if not absolutely eliminate them from consideration for an at-large spot in the playoff. So there's some desperation in prime time. There's a little bit of bad blood, probably wouldn't be fair, but intensity and knowledge.
Spicy subplots
In this game. Who you like? You like the Sooners or the Vols?
I like the Vols in this game. I'm a little worried about the Sooners, Rece. Just if you look at the way the rest of their schedule unfolds, and John Mateer's hand is improving. It'll be interesting to see if he's still wearing that thumb splint. It's been a bit of a struggle for him, and it's hard to run a guy with some abandon if your hand is going to be exposed there. So it will be interesting to see how much at this juncture they can let him rip. So I think this is a low scoring game. I think these are 2 good defenses, and I think Tennessee figures out a way to win at home.
So do I. I think Tennessee wins the game at home. They'll make more big plays than Oklahoma, both in terms of creating negative plays for the Sooners with sacks and tackles for loss and explosive plays on offense. I think the big play edge will go in Tennessee's favor. That will be the difference in the game. Now, Oklahoma's got a great defense too. It'll have to carry them, I think. So if they can, Joey Aguilar has at times, he's turned the ball over some in moments. That Sooners can get that. That's the key to the road win for Oklahoma, is if they can force mistakes. But I'm not betting on it. I'm going to go with Tennessee to win that game and stay in it. Now our deep cut game before we get the Pac-12 back, the 2-pack, the first of a 2-pack between Washington State and Oregon State. Oregon State has 1 win on the season. They too have an interim coach in Rob Akey. Washington State has, they've come close to winning a couple of big-time road games against Power 4 opponents. They had a shot at Ole Miss, lost by 3, had a shot at Virginia, lost by 2. These 2 are going to play again later this season. Who do you like? You like Wazoo, or does Beeve rise up and get a victory?
Yeah, I love the duet here that we will get with these 2 schools, and I'm actually really curious to see how this Pac-12 shakes out next year when you get your fuller menu of schools. I think it's gonna be really interesting to see where it tiers up with everything. Colorado State's chatting a lot like they're going to spend big. San Diego State's been a little bit lost in this shuffle until this season, when they've really done a good job under Sean Lewis to reestablish themselves on the West Coast. I will take the Coug. The Beeve just hasn't found a groove this year. Our old friend Malik Murphy just hasn't quite it hasn't quite fit there like it did for DJ Uiagalelei when he went from the ACC there.
Yeah, Oregon State's had a couple of close games. I mean, Houston has lost one game this year, and there is no reason in the world that Oregon State should have let that game get away. They ended up losing by 3. They lost a tight one at Appalachian State. Wake Forest blew them out. Their only win is against Lafayette. I just, the hilarious thing is when you look on the schedule and it gives overall record and conference record, there's a drop-down menu on ESPN.com for the Pac-12. And of course, this year they're the only 2 teams in it. And it says Washington State 4-4, 0-0. Oregon State 1-7, 0-0. So this is like a new season, for Beef. So I'm going to go Washington State.
Did they play for a trophy?
They should. They should actually make a Pac-12 trophy. They should play, if they split, they should play a third time in championship game.
Like a Ghost of Kliavkov trophy?
Wow. Personal foul targeting Pete Thamel. That plays under further review.
I mean, the personal foul is that the league imploded. Not that I brought up the guy who was in charge when it did.
Well, okay, you have that, but would Larry Scott's visage have a place on that trophy too?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to put both of them. It is Halloween week, so it's.
And we should wrap up like that because DJ has told me that some of the Thanksgiving talk early in the podcast upset him because he prefers. He thinks the first holiday we should speak of is Halloween. He's a big fan of Halloween. If you were going to. You don't strike me. Are you a costume guy? Would you dress up?
Not a costume guy.
When's the last time
I did wear a white suit recently for a bit.
That was at Penn State. That was just going with the flow of the program. That was getting into the spirit of the day.
Yeah.
What's the last costume you wore, Pete?
I once went for Halloween as partly cloudy with a chance of showers. And you dress up as a cloud and you bring a spray bottle and that's the bit. That's a pretty good costume, isn't it?
It's not bad.
That's not bad.
Pretty good.
Teddy Thamel, T-Rex.
Well, that's not surprising. Teddy loves the animals, loves the dinosaurs.
Yep.
What's Tegan going to be? Are you going to dress her?
She's got a little golden retriever outfit. So she's going to break Kate's Instagram with that, I'm sure.
Yeah. We dressed Elizabeth's first Halloween. We put her in a little Pooh costume.
Oh,
so she was about. What's Tegan? When was she born?
She's July 23rd.
Okay,
so.
My daughter's birthday is July 26th. So about their Halloweens are about the same age. So everybody loves to see the little costumes. Can't even eat the candy, but that's more candy.
Do you dress up, Rece?
No.
Okay.
The last time I dressed up my goodness, I guess it had to be the late 90s when I was doing RPM Tonight. Someone had given me a fire suit, with it was like an Ice House beer, whoever they were sponsoring at the time.
Ice House beer, there's a throwback.
Yeah, give me an Ice House beer fire suit, like a racing suit that you wear if you were driving the race car. And so I put that on, took the kids trick-or-treating wearing that. I think I had on a cowboy hat, and everybody who said anything to me, I just said something like, "If you ain't first, you last." And that the bit was I was like semi Ricky Bobby, that's yeah. I don't know. I just didn't do it. You're not a sweets guy. What's the best Halloween candy? And what's
I would say
Halloween candy?
I would say I'm a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup guy. If I had my death row Halloween candy choice, I think it would be Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. I think Milky Way is wildly overrated. That would be my Halloween hot take. Yeah, I don't like Milky Way at all. And I never liked the neighbors who gave out apples. Like, come on, man. Like, that's just judgy.
Yeah.
Even if they're caramel.
Or toothbrushes too. There were some that gave out toothbrushes, like your parents weren't capable of telling you to brush your teeth after ingesting copious amounts of sweets. I would agree with you on the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Big fan of that. Also, though, and you don't get this on Halloween as often as you should, but Junior Mints.
Oh.
Junior Mints and York Peppermint Patties.
Yeah, those are good.
Tremendous wins.
DJ, what do you got? Yeah, what do you got,
DJ? This was your idea. So what's the best Halloween candy?
The best Halloween candy is obviously Skittles. I mean, I think that if you can give Skittles, even if it's just a little mini pack, they are the go-to candy. I was scared that one of you was going to say candy corn, and the podcast was going to be canceled at that point. We were going to just not do anything.
I'm down on candy corn.
Candy corn is the worst thing ever.
No, it's not.
Oh,
candy corn is a nice little walk by. Take it out of the jar and just get a little sugar buzz. Now, the thing is, you can't get the cheap candy corn. If you go and just get like generic, candy corn from the drugstore, you got to get the right brand. Better yet, if you can find, there's a place here where we are right now in Connecticut that I think they make it or something like that. Now, see that's just little nuggets of deliciousness. So
yeah, to me that's like the cauliflower of candy.
I feel like I feel like that's such a cliched take. Everybody loves to hate on candy corn. It's not so bad.
I love cliches. Just ask my editors.
I mean, what? No, I haven't read many cliches because usually the polysyllabic words that you prefer are not part of cliches. But cliches become that because there is some truth in it, I guess. But I don't know, DJ, do you really dislike candy corn, or are you just saying it because you feel like that's a popular thing to say?
I feel like it's genuinely, if you went to someone's house as a kid and they gave you candy corn, it was almost as bad as like giving me a peppermint. Like it was like, this is just not Halloween candy.
I will grant you that. Now, maybe, maybe people that's what they could afford if they were going to be generous with the candy. So you don't want to cast aspersions there.
That's fair.
But there's also the possibility that they're being cheap. That's also the possibility. Because you can buy, I don't really know for sure, but I feel like that you can buy a vat of candy corn for like $8. That's what I feel like anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
You can fill your bathtub with candy corn for like $8 or $9, and then just hand out the rest of it.
I would choose to not bathe.
I hope that you get every treat you want on this Halloween season. Thanks for listening to the College GameDay Podcast. Download this wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe and never miss a single episode, and great insight and debates like whether candy corn is good and whether Power 4 teams should hire sitting coordinators without head coaching experience. We'll talk next time.